This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, let's wait for 1 more minute. Hi, Mia. How are you? Amya, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear.
Okay, great. So, adaptable. This one thing here. Uh, so when you actually click on subnets, you have the associate. That's one thing I really forgot. I was searching for this, and yes, this happens because. So currently I have only two networks. So let me take the small network. How many subnets I have? Two subnets. So I'm giving a subnet 2, and that's it. It's going to attach it to the subnet 2. Okay. So now subnet 2 also has internet. Okay. But we normally have one subnet with internet and another subnet without internet. So let me just change the rule of not having internet here. Just want to delete. Okay, you can see this, right? I'm deleting this route. Okay, it's taking time. Okay, that's done. So I'm going again. I'm defining one more route. I want this to be private default. Gateway route. The prefix would be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. But here I'm going to choose none. It means that I'm blocking all the internet for this subnet. Okay. Now this is your weekend task. Okay. Let me just write in this. Where is this? Let me see this. The weekend task. Please create new virtual for subnet one subnet one access and should have security groups the code should be access okay. If else, why? If not. So this is the task for the weekend DevOps task. Okay. The first and foremost, what I really need you guys to create would be a virtual network. Inside the virtual network, I prefer you create four subnets, of which okay, I missed one more. The fifth line is the virtual create a route to okay to virtual okay. So these are the 5 conditions that the network should actually qualify. Simple, create a VM, create a virtual network, create 5 subnets, attach a security group, then create a VM, attach public IP address, okay, and then put it in subnet 1 and access internet, and create another virtual machine, put it in subnet 2 to subnet 4, should not have access to machine. So this is the weekend task. I hope this is doable. If you have any comments, if you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Let me just see who else is there in the channel. Amaya and Richa. So this is your weekend task. Create a VM, complete virtual network, create subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3, subnet 4, and then make subnet 1 public accessible. And the remaining 3 are not publicly accessible. Use SCGs at subnet level. If possible, use at VM level because you're learning. So and then create a route. This route from subnet 2 should actually go to first check the whole virtual network, and then only should go to the blocked So we normally have 5, right? None, virtual network, IP. So first, the route should be from subnet to. So I'm talking about machines which are placed in subnet 2. So if you place any machines in subnet 2, try to route it via first subnet 2, then subnet 3, subnet 4, and then only block them. So because I want all the subnets to be intercommunicated. Okay. So this is the basic requirement. If you have any questions, you can ask me now, or later we can move forward. Any questions, Amaya and Richa? Richa? Richa, were you able to hear me? I think there is some problem with Richa. I hope she understands my message. Okay, let's move forward because I have to discuss a bit more bigger concepts now. So coming to this, so yesterday I think I clearly showed you the funny thing. I have looked all over the place, but it is there in subnets. It's just that I have to click on associate and choose my whatever the network I want to associate with, and then choose the subnet I want to associate. Currently, I'm already associated that, so subnet 2 is no longer having any internet access because the route table is already modified. Good. Now, if we just look into my configuration now, okay. So this is the configuration I have. Subnet 1 and subnet 2 are created. Subnet 1 has direct public access and public IP is attached, and there are resources in VM. This is actually utilizes the public IP and can communicate via internet. So which we actually tested with Ubuntu yesterday. Now I have subnet 2. The subnet 2 has no resource, but however, the IP route is already cancelled for public IP. So you won't be able to access internet here because the route is already attached. The route table is already attached, and since we don't have that route, so the network can't go outside. So the access only limited to subnet 2. Even it can't even speak with subnet 3 and 4 because we didn't create them. Now, this is the task for you to create and check. Now, let's move on further. VMs. Now, we have just created a VM right yesterday. So while creation of VMs, how many components are there? We didn't discuss. We just put a message and we just attached some disk. We filled all the required options. But in short, if you actually look into the resource requirement from a VM perspective, then this is the current requirement with respect to virtual machines. So virtual machines should definitely any Azure deployments. So install any you can't install any operating system in Azure. You can't. So you can't put your disk somewhere and then try to run and install. It's not possible with Azure. You have to create a post-ready virtual machine image, and you can actually utilize this image to create a VM. But you can't install. But you can actually you can actually make a uh, what do you call this? You can cook. Normally we say cook, but the most appropriate word would be pre-deployment ready image. So currently, the Azure virtual machines have several aspects or several components, of which we're going to discuss now. The first aspect would be an image. What is an image? Image is nothing but it's already, let's say, if you want to install any kind of extra binaries, you install and you make a deployment image. So this image basically contains 4 components, as you can see in the diagram. This image actually described, it has some kind of storage. It has the required VM extensions. It has the VM size. It has network interface. So this image, okay, this image, I mean, when I actually use the image, there are a lot of options, right? Yesterday, as you can see in yesterday's class. So the first option I actually looked into the storage. How much GB? 30, 40, 50. So by default, I get 30. Now, so what is the size? When you say size, it means what type of instance. So it is a smaller instance, bigger instance, or in a high performing instance, a low performing instance. So Azure has a lot of different types of instances, as we can see yesterday. Now, it also actually has some extra component which you can actually pre-cook in the image, that is virtual machine extension. So you have to, if you have any kind of extensions, if they're already installed, those will gonna get used. Now we have something called network interface, which is the step 4 of virtual machine creation. So in this virtual machine creation, the network interface, nothing but is network interface card. So if you are using any kind of a network interface card, you want, I mean, virtual machine comes with a new network interface card, but if you want to utilize the existing network card, you can even do that. Okay, it shouldn't be a problem. So these are the main 4 components which is actually already prepared in the image, and based on your selection, the virtual machine creation will happen. So let's go and dig deeper now with respect to virtual machines. Okay, yes, these are routes. I think I forgot about showing a small interesting component. So let me just go to the small network, go to the subnets. So this is subnet 2. If you just go to subnet 2, okay, if you just open the subnet 2, it says that this route table is RT1. Now, I don't know, there are 2 interface cards in subnet 2. Okay, I think I'll show it to you some other time because I just wanted to show you. See, these are the data. So if I actually attach, okay, let me do one thing. Let me attach it to, this is what, small network. Okay, to this is fine. I just want to change my subnet. So I'm going to remove this here. It's associate. Now, if I associate this with network demo, okay, and subnet one, hmm, so now if I go to VM demo, go for networking, okay, so with the UI, this is the main. I have to all over the place, but so I have to right, and then hit. Now, if you see, this is the user. Now, if you see, this is active and this has become inactive. So what I just wanted to say is that when you actually create your own route table, and you definitely have to create your own route table if you go into a day-to-day job, it's not really that hard. It's just that you need to understand a bit of networking. Since we already discussed about networking, how each default packet, the default address would be 0.0.0.0 slash 0. And if you want to communicate with internet, just put internet there. Otherwise, just put a virtual network. Then you will communicate with all the virtual subnets. Now, since I have attached with the same route policy, this one, okay, this one, the default one, the route has been become invalid. So what I just wanted to say is that if there is a machine which actually has already automated route creation happen while creation of this particular virtual machine, and then you added some kind of extra route tables, then your route tables will take higher precedence than the default one. So this is just what I want to cover. Okay. So remember this, it's very also useful in your exams if you're writing any, let's say, architect level exams. Now let's focus on the Azure. So let me just say, let's work on some, since we are already discussing about Azure. Uh, let me get me a particular network. Now this is the resource group, and hmm, okay. So this is our. Now I just wanted to say location. Mhm. So what account? Where is the location? Sorry. Mhm. Yes, East US. Okay, so let me just get this. So I'm just using a command called get Azure RM VM image publisher. Okay, and the location here I'm using East US, and I just try to check what are the publishers. So what I'm basically doing here is that I'm actually trying to see the number of publishers in this particular region. So this is command line. Okay, you don't really need to do everything by console. Feel free to use command line as much as possible. This makes your life more easy and happy. Okay, so the command is simple. Uh, get Azure RM VM image publisher. So since we wanted to have a VM image which we want to put a new virtual machine, so we have to check for available VM image publishers. Now if you just see, there are a lot of them, but there would be a publisher called Ubuntu or Canonical. Okay, so I think there would be, so when you actually wants to use, the publisher name would be Canonical. Okay, so I just put that name. Okay, so when I put a publisher name as Canonical, and then I can, since I want to select this publisher name called Canonical, then I have to provide another select offer. Okay, where is the this is for storage. No problem. So if you just see, publisher name, publisher name doesn't mention name. Publisher name offer. What? The parameter cannot be found. Publisher. There's no, there's no, the parameter cannot be found. Not just parameter name. Parameter name is publisher, but there is a publisher. So let me just say this one. Now I know my reason. So the thing, see, the problem is, you see, the location is L capital. I kept L small. Okay, remember this. This is the big problem, and we just need to get used to it. So that's why I always write my comments and keep it aside, because from time to time I make a lot of these mistakes. So if you just see, currently the canonical offers around lot of images, of which I actually use Ubuntu server. Okay, now if I want this Ubuntu server, then put this as offer. Now I want to select now. Remember this. This is the same pattern that you have to follow. Okay, just you. Okay, yeah. Okay, now understood. Um,
AL is small in location, right?
sorry?
A location AL is small, no? It's capital.
No, no, that will work. These are already commands I actually use, so there should be a problem. RMVM image SKU. RMVM image SKU location is publisher canonical offer event to server select SKU. This one should be here. Get Azure RMVM space is not confirmed. We don't need any spelling here. Okay, it is. Ah, that's good. Now you have the required versions, like the current available versions of this particular Ubuntu server. Now you want to see, or if you want to select any version, okay, then let me just take the help. So it will be get Azure RMVM image. You are taking the image location. Yes. It's ES East ES East ES publisher canonical offer Ubuntu server SKU 16, and now we are selecting a version. So these are all versions. So these are types or models. These are versions. Now I think we already got to a point. Now we just want to set this VM source image. So let me just copy this one. VM source image. So now you are just this is for verification. So if you just want to check by using command line, you can just using your get Azure RMVM, whatever the kind of a command, maybe publisher, maybe alpha, maybe SKU, anything. But now if you want to use this image, then the command would be set Azure RMVM source image. So whenever you say, so remember all the time, set Azure RMVM is constant. Now, what actually changes later this part is that you have to focus. The source image means you are sourcing this image. If you actually want to just check the version, then you are checking the image. Then you want to check the image SKU, then you're gonna check image SKU. And then if you want to check the offer, then you can check an image offer. So now I want to use publisher canonical. I want to use the offer is Ubuntu server. I want to use the SKUs 1604, then the version latest. I'm fine with it. When I do that, from command line, it's going to ask simply supply values for following parameter. So you have to just supply value. So what is a particular type? The name would be, can I get this name? Command let set Azure VM source image position supply values for the following parameter. Okay, I'm getting surprises nowadays. Okay. I don't know, it's actually throwing somewhere. Let me just see. To you. Hmm. Hi, can you hear me now? Hello. Hello.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So the thing is that it is actually asking a value for VM. Okay. So the value of a virtual machine. So which is nothing but the complete virtual machine name and the standard everything is the information for this as an input variable, like we did with the network before the last example. So we can actually follow this one, but I have to delete again the whole resource group. So now I'm defining availability set, get Azure availability set, resource group name. So I have a resource group name. I don't have availability set as well. So I can't actually follow this example now. But I will actually post you a sequence of steps that you can actually use the command line to create VM from your command line. Okay. So I couldn't actually go through it because my machine already has all the required set. So it doesn't ask me much. Now, since I'm doing it in a new account, I'm fixing this. So next time I will actually check and get back to you. Okay. So let's move forward. So regarding Azure Resource Explorers, if you just type resources.azure.com, then okay, let me just show you. Okay, that means you already have to have login in your console button. Once you do that, then you will get a screen like this. Okay, so okay, whatever the particular account that you're actually connected with, make sure that you have the correct connection, and it's a read-only mode. You can also write, but always prefer read-only mode if you want to. This actually helps you to, get information on your resource especially on your VM configs. So now when you actually open providers, then you have Microsoft compute, network, storage, and capacity. You go to compute, then go to operations, then you have all the required data. Okay, so this is regarding the whole account. Okay, now you don't want about anything about whole account, but you want about your subscriptions. Now, because whatever I do, I'm going to do with respect to my subscriptions. In my subscription name is custom. So if you have a subscription name, that name will pop up here. So once inside this subscription, you have to choose for what provider. Now, I'm actually, if you have more than one location, then you have the plus symbol here. Since I have only one location, you just check. Okay, got it. Okay, now when I see providers, it just got me all the, so I think this is about locations. I'm sorry, I have to be more patient now. Okay, so when I click on locations, it's gonna show you the complete schematic of your account, which is actually attached to this particular subscription called custom. So just wait a second, it's actually getting loaded. Damn. I'm sorry, this is very slow now. I don't know why, but my internet is good. Sometimes if a lot of people are using resources, of course, then you will have some capacity requirement. So here is the locations, okay? So these are all locations, East Asia, all the information. This is really required when you actually want to configure any kind of automation with respect to by using Ansible. Okay, now let's go to providers. So inside these providers, whatever you have basically 5 here: compute, network, resources, storage, and capacity. So you want to know more about your network. Okay, in such case, click on your network. Maybe I should give it. Okay, I'm refreshing it. I'm sorry, it's taking so much of time. Okay, it's gonna take time. You have to wait. You have another option. Maybe there's some problem with Azure in India now. Time to time, this also happens, so don't be shocked. Azure is really slow. And you also you also need to be familiar with your service checks. So even though you have all the resources included, it doesn't really mean that your services are always healthy. Sometimes Azure goes down. In such case, you see the Active Directory at the global level 4 days before has gone down, but the root cause is available. Okay, so there are a lot of planned maintenance also happens. Make sure that you are aware of your planned maintenance. That means if you just log into your service health dashboard, then you will obviously know everything regarding the planned maintenance. If there is any kind of health advices or security advices from Azure team in any
If we
service.
have availability set during planned maintenance, also we can have our VM available, right?
Yes, I mean, see, I mean, it depends. It impacts only one company. So they don't actually take down the whole cloud in a region. What they do is that they actually prepare an alternative. Suppose if they are actually making some kind of maintenance to their storage services. Okay, in such case, uh, how they maintain is that they give a time stamp of 1 hour to 2 hours. In those 1 to 2 hours, the particular region where if you have a certain region, then in that region, your storage access will be very slow.
Okay.
It's not down, but it's super slow.
Oh, okay, got it.
So in such case, what you need to do, obviously, now, maybe another failover. Okay, but time to time, there are some times where this is not a practical thing. So you just need to bear with it. But that also depends on what kind of service you are buying. If you are just buying a small service, or if you're going for a very premium, then the Azure will make sure that you have such kind of service levels always available to you. So things change based on what kind of service you are actually receiving from Azure. So if you just see from the providers now, we have all the information regarding the providers in these regions. Now let me just go to the network. So when I open network, why it is super slow? I don't know. This is not normal. It's like you click, you get the info, you understand it, you follow. So now you can check a lot of availability options, of which the current interesting part for me would be virtual networks. You just say your whole information is here in a JSON format. I have a small network, I have a sub network, I have a sub one. Everything is here. And this is your get request. So if you just copy this whole URL, then you will always get your information. So this helps you to automate a lot of virtual networking or your infrastructure. Now, good. We discuss that. We almost discussed it, except I need to make sure that from vanilla, I need to have all the commands available so that you can create a virtual machine by command line. Good. That's the time. Okay. We still have some time. So let's see. Until now, what we discussed, okay, we discussed most of the main basics of Azure. We discussed there are only 4 basics. The first one is, of course, virtual network. Second one is virtual machine. The third one is, the components inside the virtual network, storage. Now let's go to storage. This is the final one and the most important one as well. See, how are these actually storages work? When you actually create a virtual machine, the virtual machine has to come with some disk space. So when you say virtual machine disks, it means that these disks which is attached to your virtual machine, okay, like the example, we created a VM demo. When I created a VM demo, I'm actually attaching some kind of a disk space. I'm saying that minimum 30 GB should be attached to this instance. So that disk is called a managed disk. Okay, it is managed by Azure, and this is basically hosted in Azure storage. Okay, so now one thing is clear: every virtual machine requires a disk space to run, and This disk space is basically available in Azure, and this is basically hosted in Azure storage. Now, a virtual disk, okay, this disk is basically used for this operating system installation. So basically, is it just like any typical day-to-day laptops where we install an operating system and then the disk space has a good value, the first what you call this MBR record, which actually used to load the whole OS from the disk. Same happens with the virtual machines as well, but just you need to understand that this disk is basically maintained at Azure storage. So there are basically three different types of disks for the VMs. The first one is operating system disk, which we just discussed. It's based on virtual machine image, which is actually required. So there are some kind of a custom virtual machine disk is required for custom operating system. Okay, so these are basically, we just name them as operating system disks. Okay, now we have something else. This disk is basically for data, so we call them data disks. So data disk basically used for typically for the purpose of information read and write methods. So whenever this particular virtual machine has a huge amount of data read and write requirement, you can actually use a data disk as well. Okay, but this is an extra disk. This is not going to be the default disk that we just created in our VM demo class. Now we have the third one, which is a temporary disk. This temporary disk is actually included in most of the VMs for just temporary purposes. So just remember this: every VM comes with a bit of temporary disk, but this is just temporary and data can be lost, and you should not use this, and mostly you won't. You will either stick with the data disk or you will stick with your operating system disk. Even the operating system disk is not really recommended. You have to use for all the data. Let's say if you install any application on your operating system, then the application, if the application writes data to the disk and you wanted to utilize your VM, then you have to mount a data disk. And mounting means, do you know guys what is called mounting, by the way?
Installing an operating system on top of any original operating system.
No, that is yes, almost right, but not really exactly. You're not going to install, you're going to mount. It's something like when you actually put a USB drive inside your laptop, you're mounting the USB drive to your laptop. Likewise, when you're actually mounting, that means you are actually taking a separate component and you are attaching it to your virtual machine. So if your virtual machine is deleted, this disk won't be get deleted. Okay. So I hope you understand. Richa, any issue with this one? What is called mounting? Were you able to comprehend?
Yeah, I got it.
Good. So this is basically the basic meaning of mounting. Okay, so now coming to the important information about VM disk. Okay, so we already discussed the different types of disk: operational disk, data disk, and temporary disk. Temporary disk, forget about it. Now we're coming to operational disk and data disk. Coming to operational disk and data disk, all see any operating disk or any virtual disk, they are in the format. Okay, the end format would be something like VHD. That means virtual hard disks. Okay, so these virtual hard disks are actually stored in Azure storage account. So your account has something called Azure storage account as well, right? Even mine has one. So it will store in this Azure storage account as blobs. Okay, so don't worry what is a blob. Just remember that it is kind of a storaging reference element or a type of a format, okay, to store the data. So Azure actually store them in the format of blobs. Now VHD files can be used virtual hard disk files. So virtual hard disk files can be used as a source to create disks or images. So we're gonna create a small virtual machine as an image now, but not today's class. Maybe tomorrow, maybe on Monday's class. Okay, we don't have such time. So on Monday we're gonna see how to create your own custom image. Okay, that will help you to understand how what are these actually hard disk and how you actually gonna utilize them. But it is necessary you understand the disks and then types of disks, and necessary to you understand that virtual hard disk files can be used as a source to create the disk images. Okay, whatever you're gonna store, these are nothing but virtual hard disk, right? So if you want to create an image, even that actually nothing but you are actually using a virtual hard disk to create an image. So remember this, in Azure, virtual hard disk files are used. Not only in Azure, I believe, even in AWS, this is the same thing. So virtual hard disk files can be used to create virtual images. Okay. So virtual hard disk, virtual machine disks can be managed or unmanaged, by the way. So the fifth point is basically about virtual machine disks. There are two types, managed and managed. The unmanaged disk actually require manual configuration of the storage account if the disk is actually residing in a virtual machine. But we are not going to use unmanaged disk most of the times. We're going to stick with the managed disks. So all this information is managed or written or compiled at Azure level. So we just create the required disk space by entering the amount of the disk, and then this is actually maintained by Microsoft. Okay, and this actually provides some extra benefits such as reliability and control over performance is assured from Microsoft. So this actually provides more value than unmanaged disks. So managed disks basically they are independent resources, whereas unmanaged disks belongs to VM resource. Good. Now, each VM always includes, okay, an operating system disk, a temporary disk, minimum. So, temporary and operating system disk, as we discussed before, they are included in every VM. Okay, the VM disks can be one of three performance types. We already discussed this while creating the first virtual machine demo class. So if you remember, there are basically three different types of disk there. One is standard magnetic, that means standard HDD disk, standard SSD disk, and a premium SSD disk. So standard HDD disk or magnetic disk basically is very low cost. It has a very low speed as well to write and to read, and but it's actually used for bulk storage, maybe kind of a backups. But if you move with the standard SSD disk, it is very similar to our current day-to-day HDD disks. But it provides with high reliability and consistency. But we have something called premium SSDs. This actually means high performance, low latency, very fastly accessible to VMs. So remember this for let's say critical operations, you have to use premium SSDs to make sure that you have the high performance and low latency. So that's all about the disks. And if you have any more requirement, you can actually visit Azure, go to virtual machine, Linux, and disks. You're gonna read all more different types of disks, and the information that we just discussed will be more in detail. Now, we understand about disks, we understand about types of disks, we understand about mere characteristics of disks. Now, the fourth and last component would be security of the data. So how are you going to ensure that the data that you're going to store on these disks will be secure? So we have something called Azure Storage Service Encryption. Okay, this is a service provided by Azure. It ensures or it actually safeguards the virtual machine disks at Azure infrastructure level. Okay, so this payment is already included in your subscription when you actually create a disk, so don't worry about it. Now, the one thing that is a premium is Azure Disk Encryption, so which actually ensures that your even though your disk is actually physically somebody actually got the access to it, Okay, the data with resource level will be protected at OS or boot. Okay, so simple is that your whole disk is encrypted, and it's very less likely that somebody can hack into it. So that's basically data at rest method. Okay, remember that. So that's all for now, and Monday we're gonna discuss on creating a custom image and moving further. Thank you. Any doubts, guys? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you discuss one more time about weekend task? Because I joined little late, so I couldn't get it.
Yeah. So the weekend task is simple. The first task is to create a virtual network. Okay. The second task, I mean, it is a compromising 5 tasks. Okay. The first task is to create a virtual network, and this network should have 4 subnets, and the first subnet should be able to access internet, and the second, third, and fourth should not be able to access internet, and it should have all these subnet should have security groups, and the first subnet also demands extra requirement of having a virtual machine. This virtual machine should be able to access internet. Now the second subnet, you will have another virtual machine, but it should not be able to access internet, and you have to prohibit it by using routing at domain level. I hope that is clear.
Okay.
Perfect. So catch you on Monday then.
Okay.
Have a
Yeah.
good weekend. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you.